bulk material, which is then pressed into tablets. That then goes through extensive testing to make sure each tablet contains exactly what the label says it does. The tablets are breaking down in the exact time that they should. There's so much testing and quality control, making sure that everything is meeting strict GMP, Canadian GMP guidelines, among the strictest in the world for manufacturing of these supplements. So there are so many steps. It's really an impressive thing to see, to get to that final tablet that you take in the morning.
Welcome, everyone, to episode number 25 on the Healthy Habit Podcast. We're talking today with Dr. Kate Rhéaume, naturopathic doctor and author. Welcome to your first time on the podcast, Dr. Kate. And it's amazing because you're a former faculty member and graduate of the CCNM, Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. We're colleagues in the naturopathic field. Dr. Kate also lectures internationally on many topics related to health and wellness, and she's a frequent guest on radio and television across North America. Dr. Kate's the author of the best-selling book, Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox, How a Little-Known Vitamin Could Save Your Life. Welcome to episode 25, Dr. Kate.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
So what's going on your end in the health field before we dive into today's topic, which we're going to cover the anatomy of a multivitamin and the whole earth and sea line. But I want to give our new listeners here of the new platform, which we started this year, kind of a little background on you and how you got to this point.
Well, I'm originally from Montreal, born and raised, and I was going to follow in the footsteps of a big sister and pursue a career in conventional medicine. And the more time I spent in the hospital, and I guess you could say as a pre-med student, I wasn't feeling it really. And through my own health experiences, I ended up pursuing a career in naturopathic medicine, after being helped by a naturopathic doctor, and never looked back. And I just find it is such a fascinating area. It's always growing, expanding, new science, new research that keeps me busy and occupied all the time.
Amazing. So let's dive right into it. I want to cover the anatomy of a multivitamin. First of all, why should someone even take one? This is a great debate in the health world, the anti-aging prevention world, versus the conventional system. Some say it's beneficial, some say it's not. So let's start there. Why should someone take a multi?
Well, I think of a multivitamin as inexpensive health insurance. What I mean by that is it makes sure that you are getting in amounts of every essential nutrient, as well as some non-essential ones, but that still do contribute to our health. And it helps to bridge the gap between what might be a perfect or an ideal diet and what we might actually be eating every day. Absolutely not a substitute for a healthy diet. You want to just eat unhealthy and take a multivitamin. That's not the idea. But the fact is, who is eating a perfect diet? I hear people saying things like, oh, if you just eat healthy, you don't need to take any supplements. But okay, are you eating organ meats every day? Are you eating these superfoods all the time? The fact is, a multivitamin helps to provide the nutrients that our body needs so you don't have a shortfall, because that can become problematic for sure.
Tell us about the whole earth and sea line of multivitamins specifically. How is this going to be different from, let's say, one you can get at Costco?
Or something, the bright orange ones we may have grown up eating as
Right.
kids or whatever,
Gummies.
those one a days and
The Fred Flintstone gummies.
Exactly, that's it. So big difference here on a number of levels. Let me see. So we're starting with a whole food base, and we can talk about the importance of that shortly. In the multivitamin, there's a whole food concentrate that complements the, standard, obviously essential vitamins and minerals that you need or that are required to be in a multivitamin, many of which are sourced from food where that makes sense. There are some instances in which it's better to have them from other sources. We can talk about that. In terms of, for example, active B vitamins. And all of these multis contain vitamin K2, which I love. That's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, of course, because the topic of my book. And there are formulas custom tailored to different ages and stages of life, men 50 plus, women 50 plus, which is important too.
Amazing. So what's different about like if you can take it in a capsule or a powder, liquid, how should someone start if they've never really been consistent with taking multis? How would you go about
That's a
that?
great question. I think there's this notion that I would love to debunk right here and now that somehow, for example, first of all, that liquids are somehow more absorbable.
Hmm.
That's absolutely not the case.
Okay.
Certain nutrients like minerals are not soluble in liquid. Even if you can find a way to put them in a liquid, that doesn't mean that you've made them necessarily more absorbable somehow. So that's a notion or perception people may have that's not accurate. Some nutrients work well in liquids, but many of them don't. Same thing with powders, especially when looking at multivitamins. There's always going to be B vitamins in there.
Right.
Those can tend to oxidize in a powder, so that's usually not the best option. And so when it comes to multis, you're typically looking at a capsule or a tablet. Again, there's often this notion, oh, capsules are better because once you break down the outer capsule, all of the nutrients are released and you absorb them all immediately.
Hmm.
And that's also not how it works. So
Okay.
really, a tablet, as long as it's well made, well designed, well formulated, is a really nice way to take a multi because the nutrients are released slowly, allowing for improved absorption, and that of course is tested. The dissolution time of your tablet will be checked by a good manufacturer.
So would this be considered a whole food concentrate type of multivitamin?
That's absolutely right. So farm fresh factors is the name given to the concentrate of whole foods that form the base of these whole earth and sea multis. So the kinds of foods that often make it to the list of superfoods, berries and greens and grasses like wheatgrass, for example, all of those concentrates going into the multi.
And so why is that benefit? Why highlight some of the benefits of having that in their fresh and raw state as opposed to a purely synthetic or 80% synthetic multivitamin?
Well, there's a few factors here. That I think the big one is, we talk about nutrition and the like foods that are often deemed superfoods, right? Like the berries and the greens and all that. They often don't get that designation because of the vitamins and minerals that they
Mm.
contain, but it's the other nutrients, these phytonutrients, phytochemicals, naturally occurring plant-based compounds that do other things for us above and beyond vitamins and minerals. They're often antioxidants, for example, or may play other roles in our health. And so complementing standard nutrients with that whole food base is really nice, kind of best of both worlds situation.
Amazing. Tell us about the different options for men, women, 55 plus, teens. How does that? How
Mm-hmm.
many different options are there?
There's four standard options plus a prenatal option.
Okay.
And it does make a difference because people do need different types of nutrients at different genders, different stages of life. For example,
Yeah.
men and women who aren't menstruating don't usually need extra iron in their multi. And it can be problematic to have it in there. So those supplements or those formulas will be iron free. Whereas a woman's multi, you definitely want iron, and women who have a regular menstrual cycle need to be replacing that iron through
Mm.
food and supplements. So that's one key difference you can see in these formulas that is really important.
This is related to that, but what are some foods off the top of your head that are iron rich for menstruating women that would benefit from getting it also from food in their diet?
Mm-hmm. Number one top food would be liver. Nobody's ever happy to hear me say
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever
It's
excited about that. Liver and liver fat. Yeah, you look. So I know. So not many people are eating organ meats, but organ meats, red meat, beef, lamb, these kinds of foods top the list. Yes, you can find iron in green leafy vegetables, but much smaller amounts. Spinach is not as good a source of iron, as its reputation would have you think, and that's those forms of iron are a little bit less absorbable. But red meat is probably one of the best ways to go for sure.
and it doesn't mean you need massive steaks every day, right? I mean, it's so concentrated that you use it like a supplement almost.
In a way, yes. And, people may, like, menstruating women, especially if they're struggling with their iron levels, maybe want to eat more of that after their period to help top up their iron. And just, keeping an eye on that with blood tests from time to time if that's
Right.
an area of concern. But those, iron rich foods are important for sure.
Right, like cycling and tapering off, and then it's instead of just black or white, always on or off, like a carnivore kind of approach, or
Exactly.
you can cycle it and use it. That's kind of like a TCM approach, eating with the seasons and that idea, right, with Chinese medicine?
It exactly, which ultimately is a very functional approach to medicine, right?
Tell our viewers and listeners, Kate, about the Factors Farm. I want to highlight this. We've talked about it in a previous episode a little bit with Carrie G. Pattison, but I
Mm-hmm.
want to get your perspective on the farm. I've never been there yet. It's on the list of to-do things, so let's hear about it.
It is a remarkable place, and absolutely, I hope you get out to see that soon. It is 1,000 acres of organic farmland in the Okanagan Valley. So this is in central British Columbia. It's near Kelowna. The farms are located there. This sort of like, is a gorgeous, pristine valley that used to have a glacier. As the glaciers receded, it left behind these deep alluvial soil deposits. So this deep, rich, dark soil, which is why the area is used for
Hmm.
farming. And the land was originally established to grow echinacea, to have complete control over the echinacea growing and processing, and then be able to extract it at facilities nearby. But now it grows many of the foods that go into the whole earth and sea multivitamins, for example, things like kale and spinach and broccoli and artichokes and all those greens and the berries go into that. And to see this all in action, the way the farms work with the environment using completely organic farming methods, not even the allowable organic pesticides, just relying
Hmm.
on little frogs and beneficial insects and beneficial planting combinations, for example, and all hand harvesting. It's pretty amazing thing to see.
And it started with echinacea, you were saying,
It
the
started with
initial.
echinacea, yes, because in order to get the best quality echinacea, you need to process it quite quickly after harvesting. You can't let it dry. So, growing it in one part of the country and shipping it to another for processing is just not going to work for natural factors. So that's where they started, was with growing echinacea.
So back to the whole earth and sea multis. What percentage of the multis coming from the farm? The whole thing?
So you're looking at the whole, so the farm fresh base, many of the foods, but then there's the sea, right? We don't actually have
Okay.
oceans at the farms, but the sea in Whole Earth and Sea comes from the iodine that is sourced from kelp. So we're not far from the Pacific Ocean. That kelp is sustainably harvested from the Pacific Northwest. So that part's not being grown on
Wow.
the farms, the seaweed, but most of the vegetables going into the concentrate are. There's a
That's cool.
few little ones that just don't grow well in that
Right.
climate, but most of them do. Yeah.
Yeah, 90 plus percent. But even the seaweeds coming from US though, from North America.
That's right. Yeah.
Amazing.
Depending on the season, is somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Yeah.
Amazing. So, and I was going to ask you that, where does the sea part come in then? That's going to become from the Pacific Northwest.
Yes, that's right. And again, that kelp is such a wonderful source of iodine. And there's an example of a plant-based or food-based source of a nutrient that is superior to any other source that you can find.
Can you give us a little bit more info? There's always people that want to know about the behind the scenes. I've realized that being in practice. I'm sure you've noticed
Mm.
that over the years. How is it made? What's the manufacturing process like? Give us a little breakdown of that, of the behind the scenes on the processing
That
for the multis.
it's such a remarkable process. So I guess if you can, it somehow imagine being at the farms and then leaving the farms with that food and going to the uh, processing facility nearby that will first start with the EnviroSimplex process. So this is a process that can take these whole foods instead of having to use, say, a liquid or juicing the foods. Can take the whole foods and slowly combine them, mix them, dry them, and concentrate them. This is what this EnviroSimplex process is. So this is the process of making that whole food concentrate to begin with. That's step one. And then where that concentrate, depending on the time of season, maybe it's not providing optimal amounts of individual nutrients, and you expect a consistent amount
Mm-hmm.
of every nutrient every time you take each tablet. And so then that whole food concentrate is combined with the individual vitamins and minerals, the active Bs, the vitamin K2, the vitamin C, everything else you would want in there. That is blended and together into a bulk material, which is then pressed into tablets. That then goes through extensive testing to make sure each tablet contains exactly what the label says it does. The tablets are breaking down in the exact time that they should. There's so much testing and, quality control, making sure that everything is meeting strict GMP, Canadian GMP guidelines, among the strictest in the world for manufacturing of these supplements. So there are so many steps. It's really an impressive thing to see,
Hmm.
to get to that final tablet that you take in the morning.
And all the multi options are in tablets, correct?
Yes, all the multi-options are in tablets, because again, that makes it's a really a great delivery system for a multivitamin.
Right. Wise, and it's able to capture all the nutrients effectively in it better than
It
other ways, right?
Yeah, so capture all the nutrients and keep them stable. That's really
Okay.
important with multivitamin, with, again, particularly the B vitamins, which, if they're in other forms, can be prone to oxidizing. That's important. And then when you're looking at so many different ingredients, a tablet is a really nice way to keep those ingredients stable.
So again, you mentioned we have the prenatal option, correct? And then
Mhm.
four others, including the men's and women's 55 plus. That's one each. That's three.
Mhm.
What are the other two?
So you've got, yeah, prenatal, a women's 50 plus, and a
Okay,
men's 50 plus.
got it.
And that, like I said, it may vary in, for example, the amount of iron that you have there. The men's 50 plus, say, has some herbs in it for additional prostate support, for example,
Sure.
additional nutrients for cardiovascular support. So, because those are, that's an important health concern for men at that stages of life.
Absolutely. The number one cause of death in North
Mhm.
America,
Mhm.
especially in men, right? They get the heart attacks, strokes, dementia is even related to that. You mentioned some nutrients are added in there extra for men 50 plus. What would some of those be?
Mhm. For example, you'll see a little bit of saw palmetto in there, a little bit more magnesium compared to calcium. Again, that's for cardiovascular
Okay.
support. And so those, the specific nutrients or ingredients, as well as the ratio of some nutrients, is more tailored to focus on those health concerns.
Got it. What else did we miss that you want to touch on before we wrap it up on the whole Earth and Sea multis? Um, is this something that you've used a lot clinically over the years as well? I want to hear about that.
And personally, I think a healthy, or like a really handy practical way to think of a multivitamin is the body is always doing this nutritional triage. In other words, if you have a shortfall of any individual nutrient, the body will take what it needs for your immediate needs today
Okay.
at the expense of your long-term health. So if you think of a multivitamin as a way to make sure you're getting what you need for today and for tomorrow, then that helps to, I think, understand that a multi can be just a really handy way to balance a healthy diet, or whatever your diet may be.
You mentioned the calcium, magnesium that are added in there for extra cardiovascular support.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, you're the person to talk about this even deeper. You have your best selling book, Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox. So, what is that, the calcium paradox exactly?
Mhm. Well, this is this concept in which calcium's a double-edged sword, right? We need calcium absolutely in the body for so many things, but if it gets into the wrong places, it can cause
Mm,
serious problems. And
interesting.
so that's the paradox with calcium. Yes, we need it, but we got to keep it in check.
And it works closely with K2 and magnesium. They all work together, correct? And so, am
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
correct in saying most people that live in North America and westernized countries, they're getting way too much calcium relative to magnesium and K2, right?
Very much so. Calcium is quite easy to come by in the body, and we don't use it up quite as much or quite as quickly as we do, say, magnesium, which is harder to come by, and we go through it, especially when we're under stress. And so it's that combination that's really important.
So I want you to give some words of wisdom to people that are interested in naturopathic medicine. You're the first person, the first ND I've had on in maybe this whole year so far. So, and I get questions all the time on social media and different platforms. Hey, why'd you choose to become an ND? What do I need to do? Should I do it or not? Give some words of wisdom, Dr. Kate.
Mhm. Naturopathic medicine is really uh, a functional approach to medicine. So looking at the whole person, trying to, wherever possible, treat the underlying cause of what's wrong and not just treating or masking or maybe temporarily alleviating symptoms. And so, yes, that makes it a holistic approach, but also, like I said, a functional and evidence-based approach. So if you have ever had, for example, a medical experience that felt you felt like you were left kind of wanting, or you didn't really feel treated as a person, then you might want to consider the path of naturopathic medicine, either as a patient or maybe as a practitioner if you're looking to start your career. It's worth checking into.
Absolutely. If you want to go deep, right, and help holistically instead of just masking symptoms, that's really it,
Mm-hmm.
and getting people well from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we've touched on a lot of different things in this first episode of having you on the podcast here, Dr. Kate. We've hit on the importance of a multivitamin, why people should take it, why they shouldn't, the 5 different options through Whole Earth and Sea. We even talked about the Natural Factors Farm. So give us a little recap here in about a minute. I'll let you know as we get closer to the end there, but uh, give us a recap of today and why you're still choosing to be a partner with Natural Factors and the Whole Earth and Sea team and continue to promote and educate on this topic.
Yes, I've been with this team for 17 years now. And so, and that started, in for me, in my practice, I was noticing my patients were paying a whole lot of money for certain supplements, the so-called professional brands. And I thought, geez, I don't want to be burdening my patients with huge costs. What can I do to help them?
Right.
How can they get that kind of help more affordably? Which is how I discovered the Natural Factors products and started using them, and then eventually began to, work with the company. And so I guess my take home message is always that if you're not feeling well, there's always a chance to feel better, and probably a lot sooner than you might think, by
Mm-hmm.
addressing, what's happening underneath, but ultimately being proactive about your own health. Exercise, diet, nutritional supplements are part of that. There's other things to do. It can be really life-changing.
Amazing. I do have a couple more questions here that I wanted to touch on before we wrap it up. So regarding, I asked you about food sources of iron for women.
Mm-hmm.
What about food sources of vitamin K2 and magnesium? Since we talked about the benefits of eating whole foods in their fresh and raw state, right? And getting
Mm.
actual whole food sources of nutrients. So give us some ideas on K2 and magnesium.
Yes, well, let's see. Start with magnesium. Green leafy vegetables are a great source of magnesium, one of the best sources. You can find magnesium in whole grains. However, that can be a little bit tricky. The grains typically need to be soaked and sprouted. Nuts and seeds as well, another source of magnesium, but you have to make sure you inhibit the nutrient inhibitors that are locking up those minerals. And vitamin K2, that comes from certain types of animal foods. It's a fat soluble vitamin, so you can get this in egg yolks or butter. If the cows and chickens were out on grass, you'll get a lot more, as well as some types of fermented foods, certain types of cheeses, brie, Gouda, Jarlsberg, and natto, the Japanese fermented soy food. So certain types of fermented foods are also a good source of vitamin K2.
You said butter from ideally grass-fed, pasture-raised cows, correct? So what about
Yes.
margarine? Not margarine, or
No,
we're not going to go there.
I know you're joking with me. Yeah, we're not going to go there.
Okay, so awesome, Dr. Kate. Extremely informative episode today. And what's up and coming at Natural Factors that we should be aware of, that our listeners should keep in mind, or what's been going on here as we're approaching the spring?
Oh, lately I've been doing lots of work, and there's been lots of education and raising awareness about the importance of mitochondria, those cellular batteries, cellular engines, how they work, how to keep them working well, the huge difference that can make in our overall health, energy, vitality, cellular repair even. So that's a really fascinating hot topic, lots of new science around that, and it's an interesting one to tune into.
And so are you still in clinical practice, Dr. Kate, or are you more on the education side, writing and educating
I
now?
am more on the education side right now. Yes, I put my practice on hold because I was not finding enough time for everything, but
Everything.
I am enjoying, taking time to like do this research and staying up to date with the new science that's coming out.
Okay, great. So in this last minute, we'll do a recap for all the people listening, there's people in the store as we speak, roaming around looking for a multivitamin. Should I take one? Should I not? I heard about it. Give us a little recap, a take home, and then we'll close her out for today.
Yeah, a multivitamin, like I said, I think of it as inexpensive health insurance to bridge the gap between what might be an optimal diet, whatever that is, if we could all decide on what that is, and what we might be eating on a daily basis, just to
Right.
make sure there's no shortfall of those individual nutrients. And yeah, it can really, if you pick the right formula for you based on your, age and nutritional needs, can make a big difference. It's a foundational nutrient support.
Right. I think that's a great way to look at it, like an insurance, right?
Mhm.
You're covering those bases and then you build on top of that with your diet, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or just add it to the diet to include those extra nutrients. What's a good starting point? Naturalfactors.com, or is there a Whole Earth and Sea website separate? How do we get start from here?
There's both, but certainly wholeearthsea.com, or if you just, search up Whole Earth and Sea, there's a beautiful site that explains all about the individual formulas and how they're made. Lots of information there.
Maybe link to both below, Natural Factors and Whole Earth and Sea.
Definitely, yes. And
Wholeearthsea.com.
natural factors
Perfect.
will have more information about, say, vitamin K2 and magnesium.
Amazing. Dr. Kate, author, naturopathic doctor, frequent guest on radio and TV across North America. Thanks for taking the time, Dr. Kate, to be with us here on your first time on the podcast. And folks, look out for episode 26 as well. We're going to have a part 2 interview coming up after this one with Dr. Kate. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Take care.